So again, Wanda, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. So let's begin our journey with, as we kind of alluded to before we got on, we were just talking about the historical ramifications of Minnesota, Minneapolis, what's been going on. And I want to begin with the question I keep asking, which is 6 years ago, this pandemic changed our lives in so many ways. How did you get through that era? And how has it changed the way that you approach living today?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. I would have to say that it's really just one day at a time, even now, because everything, I mean, as a lot of people remember, everything that we kind of leaned on was so upended.
Yeah.
And we have to, or we had to kind of just, by the skin of our teeth a lot, I think for a lot of us, just kind of figuring things out on the fly. And, I've always been kind of comfortable with that, but I think that really changed my perspective in terms of how necessary that can be sometimes and just kind of reinforced that for me. So, in a way, it's kind of good because, I do have that mindset that you can get through it. You just have to just one step. You don't try and think about everything else that's coming so much, but just one day, just 1 hour, 1 minute sometimes.
Yeah.
But if you can do that, I think it kind of settles you enough to get through it.
So you're very busy with getting the message out. So I want to get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis
Mhm.
to synthesize it, to make it make sense to 12-year-olds at career day. You're in a school, the kid in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer him?
I help people who are in business to get their stories out. So whether that's trying to help somebody figure out how to start a business, or maybe they've just gone through something in their life that they want to share, my job is to listen to that person and to put their words on paper so that other people can have that story and maybe get inspired by it.
And you're also an author and a podcaster.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Okay. We'll get into all of that. So I want to know, when you were young, when you were 12 or 13, what was your dream job? What did you want to be when you grew up?
I actually had two, and I kind of, struggled between the two. I knew that I either wanted to be a musician, a teacher, in that, or I wanted to be a writer. And so
Okay.
I actually went to college for music education. I did a double music major in oboe and voice performance. Actually, did not end up pursuing that. And then I had married my husband and we had our family. And so I needed to have something that was a little bit more flexible to fall back on. So I'm like, I love to write. And so I kind of just set that up and that kind of became my default. And I'm totally fine with that because that was, one of the two dreams I had. So I don't
Yeah.
see that I necessarily missed out on anything. And certainly the education that I had still informs kind of what I do now, just even like just paying attention to things and just really being able to feel things in the moment. That's a lot of my music background. It comes into play.
Sure. So are you originally from Minnesota?
I am not. I'm actually from Michigan, right in the very tip of the thumb from a little town called Caseville.
Okay. So what were the elements early on in your life that gave you this love of writing and evolving into who you are today? What were the things that were profound that made you who you are?
Well, two things. To be very honest, my home life was very chaotic. It was not really a great home situation. So I was always kind of looking for, not, I wouldn't call it escape, but just kind of things to remind myself that there were good things, good, beautiful things in the world. So I was always reading books. I was always looking, again, as a musician, like looking for those beautiful things. That was kind of the way that I dealt with stuff. And so there was that element to it that I turned to that as basically just to cope. But then I also, I really do have this drive to just kind of, I just always wanted to contribute. I always felt like I had something to say. I didn't necessarily know exactly what that was, but I knew that I wanted to like communicate something to people and help them feel better through that. And so over time, that's kind of evolved, and that's kind of what I do now.
So I gotta know, what were the books, the very seminal books early on that swayed the way that you either loved literature or wanted to write?
I would have to say, hands down, Les Mis by Victor Hugo.
Yeah.
And I mean, that book is rather mammoth. I read it, believe it or not, in eighth grade.
Wow.
But that book, it teaches so, at least to me, taught so much about like how people interact. We all have our own pain that nobody necessarily sees. We all interconnect with somebody. And, like the main character, Jean Valjean, like just one person taking that first step to help somebody else. And like he was helped by the priest in the very beginning of that story. So it helped me kind of see like we have an influence for better or worse on people, and we get to choose what that influence is. And we can always make the choice to try to find out what people's stories are. So that's really been a shaping factor in my life.
So I have a jazz radio show, and I've interviewed a lot of musicians, thousands of musicians,
Mhm.
and I think I've only ran into several that have played the oboe.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's my precursor here. What is it about the instrument that pulled you in, and why did you love it?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I am extremely petite. I'm only 4'8".
Okay,
So there are only so many instruments that I can play,
uh-huh,
right? Just physically handle.
yeah,
But the sound of that, it's very, very, I wouldn't say haunting, but it has almost this very earthy, grounded quality that I really liked. And yet at the same time, it's so emotive. And if you know anything about the oboe, you have to be able to control a lot of things to be able to play that well. The reed is very, very small in your mouth. You've got to be able to control a lot of that. And so just very tiny adjustments, you learn to like be responsive to your body and like just really listen really well. So that playing that instrument really helped me to do that. And I just really enjoyed just like the overall sound of it.
yeah. It's interesting what that your height and your physicality can bring about in life. When I was in high school, when I was a sophomore, all the way up until that time, I was 4'11". I was
Mhm.
always small. I made me be a runner instead of getting into being a baseball player or whatever
Yeah.
else. But I remember I got so worried about it in high school that we went to a doctor, and the doctor was almost my height when he came in the room, and I'm like, "What are you going to tell me?" We're the same height. You're in your
Yeah.
50s and but there was one summer where things happened, but it's amazing the choices and the pivoting that you would make because
Hmm.
there's a chance you could have played something else, some other wind instrument,
Hmm.
and it could have been a completely different fate. So what kind of what about concerts? What was one of your first concerts that you went to?
Well, I didn't actually go to very many because, again, being where I grew up, like there just wasn't the opportunities. Like
Sure.
there's more corn than people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, it really took me a while to even get into that environment where I had the opportunity to do that. But then, when I got out here, I started going to like the Minnesota orchestra concerts and things
Yeah.
like that. But I was always listening to music. I'd go down in my mom's basement. She had an old record player, and I'd listen to like Brahms and Bach and stuff like that. So, I was exposed really early. I just didn't have the opportunity to get out and hear it firsthand until
Yeah.
I got a little bit older.
So who's been your inspirational force in your life, your hero that's allowed you to evolve and to navigate to where you're at today?
To be honest, I would say probably my mom.
Yeah.
Because she was the one person when I was growing up that like she had a rough life too. She had some rough things going on, but she was the one that actually took an interest out of my family, out of the adults that I was around to say, what is that? She'd listen to the music I was writing. She'd listen to me read my stories out loud to her. So just having that little bit of encouragement, I think if I wouldn't have had that, it would have been a very different story for how I developed.
So, being a podcast host, you get this opportunity to interview wonderful, interesting people
Mhm.
from all over the globe all the time. It's a really wonderful place to be. So, I'm going to ask you kind of a fantastical question here. If you could have the pick of the litter and interview anybody alive on this planet today, who would you interview? Who would you sit down with? Who would you want to know more about and to see who they are behind the curtain?
That's a really good question. I honestly haven't really thought about it. I I can't point to any one particular person, but I'm really drawn to people who have really gone against the grain. Anybody whose story they've kind of had to fight for things. So people like I can't even think, but just people that stand out because they don't do the normal thing. And by that, I don't just mean like, your pop people, like
Yeah.
the people who go their own way that way, I mean, like they really have their own code of how they live and they have a solid belief. Anybody like that, I'm really, really intrigued by. So I know that's kind of a not real specific answer to your question,
Yeah,
but
no, I get what you're saying. I mean, I
yeah.
think about like those Mandela or Ali figures,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Where they definitely were doing things, especially in their time, that could have mortally been really catastrophic. But they were going to do it anyways, and they didn't care.
Hmm.
There was a level of moral code that rang way more true than anything else.
Yeah.
Um, so let me ask you this. When the alarm clock goes off in the morning, what gets your feet on the ground? What gets you to do all of this work, to do it at a high level, take care of your own soul? What is that energy for you every day?
Knowing what people are going through.
Yeah.
So if I, yeah, I mean, of course I get tired just like anybody else. I guess there are days when I wake up and I'm like, man, I would love 5 more minutes on my pillow. But, I get up because I have this sense of obligation to the people who need the encouragement that I'm trying to bring. And maybe I won't encourage everybody, but it's like the story of the starfish. He keeps picking them up one by one, throwing them out. And it's like, well, why are you doing that? Because it mattered to that one. So I'm not looking for a huge audience, although that'd be great, but it's just to say that one person, if that is the difference for them today, I gotta get up. I gotta write the email. I gotta do whatever I gotta do the podcast. I gotta get that out there so that they have that, just that little bit that keeps them from going over the edge. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally does. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, along those lines of what you explained there, the thing that's wonderful about this life is that there's these little moments that people can change your life with doing something nice,
Mm.
a random act of kindness, whether it's someone you barely know or someone that you know really well. When you look at your life, what's been one of the nicest things that someone did to you that changed either the way that you lived or saw things or the way that you decided to go forward? Did you have a moment like that?
Way back in college, because remember, I played oboe, right? But I had
Yeah.
originally started on the clarinet and I did a little bit of alto sax for jazz band and stuff. So I was in it before that. And it was my senior year that I had actually decided to say, okay, I'll give the oboe a try and just see what I can learn, right? And I had auditioned. And when I auditioned for the college that I went to, the oboe professor, I mean, everything in that should have said, you might not want to take this person. But not only did he took a chance on me to see what I could learn. And the reason he did that is because he's like, you taught yourself that much in a year, and that's not to toot my horn, it's just, but like he was observant. And I think if he would not have said, okay, I'm going to take that chance on you, I see something in you. And just to have that affirmation was so like, I don't, the inspiring is not the right word, encouraging, to say, I can do it. I just need somebody like that to just give me a chance. And somebody finally did. So like that, having that was really, really nice.
So let's say you have a dream tonight and you run into the 18-year-old version of you and you walk into the room and there's an old film projector and you walk up at your age and you click the button play and it's a 60-second highlight reel of the life that you've lived, that you've orchestrated, that's happened to you, that you've evolved to. Would that young version of you believe that you live this life?
In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. I mean, I don't think I have changed completely. So I think that there are some things that would be completely recognizable and predictable. But I would say that I don't think that I would have realized how dedicated that I would be to the writing that I'm doing and like that I would have developed the sense of mission that I have. I did not anticipate that. And it kind of, to be honest, came out of left field a little bit. Um, but once I started to lean into it, then like things kind of clicked into place. Getting that vision did not happen overnight. It just like little inklings over time. And then I had all the pieces and then it was kind of like it just clicked. So if I could talk to that 18-year-old self, I'd say just wait for another piece.
Yep.
You'll get there.
Yeah, for sure. So, of everything that you've done and accomplished, what are you the proudest of?
Well, I have to start with saying, obviously my family.
Sure.
I'm really proud of my kids. They've been through a lot, like we were mentioning with COVID earlier, when we were first talking. Just everything that they've had to deal with and watching them develop. And I know that's every proud parent was going to say that, right?
Yeah.
So I have to preface with that, but I'm also incredibly proud that I have not given up in all of the freelancing that I've done. I have created this web of multiple sites and the podcasting and stuff. So the imprint that I have is huge. And, it's still developing, in terms of audience and visibility. But I don't want to say I've done it on my own, but as a freelancer, like I have learned so much. And just the fact that I didn't quit, and again, like keeping on with that vision to say, I got to get up, and just letting that inspire me to just figure out the piece. If WordPress crashed or whatever's going on, like I can figure it out.
Yeah.
And I did. And maybe I would throw things sometimes, but I would pick the pieces back up afterward,
Yeah.
and just kept going. So I'm really proud of what I've been able to accomplish that way. And I'm starting to see some real influence of that. So, if all of that slow work is now going to start reaping some good things. I'm really proud of that.
So let me ask you this. If you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see one event in human history with your own eyes, it wouldn't create a weird Back to the Future tear in time. You could just see it and come on back. What would you love to see with your own eyes? Or you could go in the future if you want.
Yeah. You got me thinking. You got me thinking. There are a lot of more. I would just say in general, I would like to see any, and I don't know, maybe this, might not be exactly what you're expecting, but I would just see any moment with Jesus if I could. And I don't mean that like to interact with him. And I know that's kind of weird, but like the small moments,
Yeah.
like, and just watch the real interactions that he had, like the everyday thing. Like I would love to see like what did he do for fun and play and like like just the interactions that he had, or even like if you know the story of when he was at the wedding at Cana and his mom
Hmm.
basically said, "We don't have any wine. This is a problem."
Yeah.
And but I would love to see like was he just like busting to move the rest of the
Uh-huh.
time? Like
Uh-huh.
like those kinds of things. And I just would love to be a fly on a wall for some of
Yeah.
that stuff. So
I wonder sometimes because I'll get that answer. And sometimes it's more magnanimous. It's, at the end of his life or the resurrection. But
yeah.
I wonder with what we know historically and the impact that his life has made on humanity, if our brains would be able to process actually watching that happen,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? With what
Yeah.
we know, because it's one thing for it to be this idea that we've drawn up, but if you actually saw it happening in front of you,
Hmm.
how would your brain, from an emotional, psychological standpoint, be able to process? Because the whole
Right.
time you'd be like, there's no way, but
Hmm.
it's happening in front of you. I don't know. I always wonder that.
Well, I think part of the reason why I gave you the answer that I did is because, like when we think of God, I think a lot of us we latch onto like the power side of that,
Yeah.
right? And then when we think of Jesus, we think of that as well, But if we understand, the tenets of Christianity, Jesus was also man. That's the whole point, that he could do what he did. So if he's man, like he laughs, he had to like figure out how to put on his clothes when he was a kid. Like I would just love to watch all that because I think that teaches us like so much about who God is and how he interacts with us in a really relational way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That it removes some of the distance that power idea can create.
Yeah.
And certainly we have to respect that power. But I love the idea that by understanding who he was when he was here on this earth, we understand the intimacy that we can have.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Wanda. Everyone has a perception of you.
Mhm.
Family, friends, all the fans of your podcast, your writing, clients, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I, I would say I'm very determined, but I am also still finding out like kind of where I belong. And what I mean by that is just like I did not, when I was growing up, have a really good sense of like even what my skills and capabilities were. I didn't get a whole lot of feedback for what I could do. And so I'm still kind of latching onto the idea of my own capability. And I'd say that's where like the biggest growth I've had has been. So I know from the outside, it can look like, oh yeah, I've got it together. I know what I'm doing. I'm producing so much. No, no, like I don't know. Please tell me that I'm doing a good job because I genuinely need to hear it sometimes. That helps.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Faithful on the Clock is the podcast. If anyone
Yes.
wants to tune in, they want to hire you, delve into any of your other creative endeavors, spiritual endeavors, where do they go?
I would point them first to LinkedIn. You can always leave me a message on there. But if you want to check out my work, you can also go to faithfulontheclock.com or my author site, which is wandathibodeaux.com.
Okay, Wanda, what a joy. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time. It's been great to meet you.
Thank you. You as well.